first, let's continue with this conversation and turn to the legal side of all of it with NBC News legal analyst Misty Marris. Misty, I want to go ahead and play a little bit of what we heard from Utah's governor about just the legal process in that state, something he felt like seemingly was important to communicate to the rest of the country as they're watching this. Let's listen, and then we'll ask for you right after.
I know many of you aren't familiar with the process in Utah. I think it's important that you understand that. Basically, we have 3 days for charging documents to be filed. Early next week, those charging documents will be filed. We will obviously be working, the county attorney will be working very closely with Mr. Kirk's family as those documents and decisions are prepared and made.
So on the one hand, it makes sense that people are like, we have a certain amount of time to be able to do it. But in this case, it also looks like they kind of have a lot to begin with. Why the delay, and is this unique to Utah?
So this statute in Utah that gives these 3 days, that is very typical, and there's a similar law in every jurisdiction, and there's a reason for it. It means that somebody cannot be held once they're arrested for more than 72 hours before there are formal charges. On the flip side, it's also giving investigators that time period to gather and obtain additional evidence, continue the investigation. What he's talking about when we say formal charges is what's called a probable cause affidavit. That's when an investigator swears under oath, here's the evidence, and this is the probable cause that substantiates this arrest. It's the basis for it. And that has to be signed off by a judge. So that's the 3-day period. Again, pretty typical in every state. But where I think what we're going to see here, we know what the charges look like they're going to be. There could be more. There could be more evidence than we're aware of that will ultimately be in that formal document.
Do you think this is an example of them saying, OK, we know there's going to be a lot of scrutiny on this. We have to make sure we don't make any mistakes and take our time getting basically the paperwork correct? Why release the probable charges but not just go ahead and charge them?
Well, it could be because they're looking to supplement it with something more. There is so much that is unknown. Even though it seems like we have a lot of information, they do have the obligation to establish that probable cause. So if there's more that can go into that document, more to substantiate what we've seen thus far, then they're going to want to do it. And this is all, again, a high-profile case, to your point, but it is typical criminal procedure process to put all of that in that probable cause document.
Utah is a state that has the death penalty. Do you think that is going to be on the table here?
So from what I've seen, the charges that we anticipate, one is aggravated murder. That is telling that the death penalty will be on the table. A regular premeditated murder, very serious under the law, but not enough for the death penalty. There has to be what's called an aggravating factor. So when I look at what we're anticipating seeing in the probable cause affidavit, not only does it say aggravated murder, it also lists one of what are Utah's aggravating factors, which other individuals were in a grave risk of death based on the actions. And we saw that video. The shot comes with a large crowd. So it looks like Utah is going to go for the death penalty in this case.
Do you think we will likely see some sort of federal charges as well? Often when this happens, people will be quick to say, call it terrorism, call it domestic terrorism. There's a legal definition for that, right? Could they be looking at that here?
I'm sure the DOJ is looking behind the scenes to see if there is a federal theory. So somebody can be charged both on the state level and the federal level. When it comes to murder, usually that is in the state jurisdiction. But we've seen this. Luigi Mangione, for example, he's being charged in federal murder charges as well as state. Federal charges require some kind of interstate activity. Okay. Is it crossing state lines? It doesn't necessarily have to be that, though. It could be utilizing the internet, something that impacts interstate commerce. There's not enough information as of now to see a federal charge, but we don't know everything. And remember, investigators know a lot more than we know here today. And I imagine the Department of Justice is looking to see whether or not there's a federal theory they can use.
Based on what we know right now and the tidbits of information, which could change, right? Things change rapidly in the early days of something like this. How important do you think the internet activity will be for this?
The digital footprint is going to be crucial. And we just heard about warrants. This is what's publicly available. That's easy. You can look at where he's posted online, where he may have been engaged. But now we're going to see warrants collecting cell phones, computers, iPads. That digital footprint is going to be very telling. Is this somebody who lived their life online? What were they writing? Who were they communicating with? What did those communications look like? In these cases, it's especially just in modern day in any criminal prosecution, that online activity is crucial. And remember, we're not just limited to the day that this happened and after. We're looking back at the planning and preparation of what looks like a premeditated crime. And that's where all of this internet activity is going to be crucial.
All right. Misty Marris, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and insights as well.